The entire capital was now engulfed in a sea of cheers. Not long ago, they had been on the brink of despair. Once the city fell, the great Yin dynasty would cease to exist, and its people would be displaced, wandering far from home. They had witnessed countless tragedies like that in the past couple of years. However, just when they were at their most desperate, hope arrived with the appearance of a young figure whose presence seemed powerful enough to shake heaven and earth. With a smile, that mighty warrior from the Dao Sect caused the super-powerful elder to vanish without a trace. In his casual words, the million-strong coalition army was routed, fleeing in disarray. At that moment, they finally believed that such legends, where one word could change the fate of the world, were real. But such a figure had never appeared in the history of the great Yin dynasty, not until now. The troops on the city wall had already retreated into the city, leaving only a few essential guards. With the bloodthirsty tiger-devouring army outside, their defenses no longer held any meaning. In a grand courtyard within the capital, home to the Lin clan, the war had forced the family to consolidate all their forces here. At this moment, the Lin clan's courtyard was bubbling with excitement. Countless clan members surged out, crowding around the spacious living room, their eager eyes fixed on the slender young figure seated inside. Is that Lin Dong, our elder brother? Let me take a look. Lin Dong is one of us, from the Lin clan. Didn't you see? That elder from the Dao Sect was instantly obliterated by Lin Dong. And all those army coalition forces, he just spoke one sentence, and they were utterly defeated. Lin Dong is so handsome. Hey, can you stop being so infatuated? Hee, I'm the same generation as Lin Dong. I was at the clan meeting back then, too, but back then, Lin Dong wasn't as strong as he is now. In the living room, Lin Dong took a sip from his teacup, hearing the quiet whispers from outside. Though the voices were soft, he caught every word, and a faint smile appeared on his lips. It felt good, this feeling. Seated in the room were Lin Feng, the clan leader of the Lin family, along with several other elders. At the head of the table, however, was Lin Jintian, his face full of helplessness. That seat was originally meant for Lin Dong, but the young man had pushed the old man into it instead. Sitting below Lin Dong were Little Mink, Little Yin, Elder Zhuli, Lu Qing, and others. He had introduced them all earlier. When Lin Feng and the elders of the Lin family realized that everyone present had entered the revolution stage, their hands trembled slightly as they served tea. Though the Lin family had become much stronger recently, they still weren't used to hosting such powerful individuals. To their relief, these super-powerful beings, even the sect leaders of the Eastern Mystery region's most influential sects, treated them with utmost courtesy. While they knew this was all due to Lin Dong's influence, they couldn't help but feel excited and a little overwhelmed. Hee, Lin Dong. Lin Feng smiled widely, but his face lacked the usual dignity of a clan leader. He looked at Lin Dong with a beaming smile, one that made Lin Dong chuckle inwardly. It wasn't long ago that Lin Feng held great status in his eyes. Over the years, the Lin family has grown this much, all thanks to you. Our elder council had discussed this before. I'm getting old, and this position of clan leader. Lin Feng, I'm afraid I'm not interested, Lin Dong said with a faint smile. This old man was clever, trying to use this to tie him down. Hearing Lin Dong's refusal, Lin Feng awkwardly laughed. With Lin Dong's current strength, if he became the clan leader, the Lin family's reputation wouldn't be confined to just the great Yin dynasty. Probably even the entire Eastern Mystery region would know their name. He couldn't help but glance toward Lin Jintian for help. Over the years, he and Lin Jintian had grown quite close. Lin Jintian saw his gaze, but turned his head, unwilling to intervene. He wasn't foolish. If Lin Dong didn't want to do something, he would never force him. After all, the Lin Dong before him was no longer the child he once was. Seeing Lin Jintian's reaction, Lin Feng could only helplessly shake his head. Lin Dong watched this exchange with amusement, then gently set down his teacup and smiled. Let my father have it. After all, the Lin family was just a branch of the Lin clan, and Lin Jintian had made great sacrifices to return to his roots. Lin Fan was momentarily stunned, then immediately filled with joy. He nodded repeatedly. Lin Xiao was Lin Dong's father, So it didn't matter who became the clan leader, right? In the end, if something happened, would Lin Dong not help his father? You little rascal. Lin Xiao, who was standing nearby, couldn't help but speak up. However, Lin Fan quickly smiled and said, Lin Xiao, there's no need to refuse. We all know your abilities. From now on, you'll be the clan leader of the Lin family. It's settled. After saying this, he didn't even wait for Lin Xiao to reply before quickly leaving. The way he did it left Lin Xiao stunned. When had he ever seen someone take the position of clan leader so decisively? Since Donger has already said so, you should just accept it for now. Lu Yin said softly from the side. Upon hearing this, Lin Xiao could only glare at Lin Dong in annoyance and didn't say anything further. Donger, come here. I need to speak with you. Lu Yin suddenly waved at Lin Dong with a smile. Lin Dong froze for a moment, then walked over. Lu Yin gently adjusted his clothes, a peculiar smile on her face. Do you know? In the 3 years since you left, every year, 2 young women have come to visit us. Lin Dong was stunned, his face full of confusion. Women? Come to visit my parents? Ahem. Lin Xiao coughed lightly and said, those 2 girls are quite good. That rascal actually has some taste. Lin Dong was even more bewildered and helplessly asked, who are you 2 talking about? One's called Ling Qingzhu, and the other's named Ing Huan. Lin Xiao chuckled. This time, even Lin Dong, with his usual calm demeanor, couldn't help but be dumbfounded. It was really unexpected. Ling Qingzhu had a proud and aloof personality, so for her to come visit Lin Xiao and Lu Yin was quite unimaginable. And Ing Huan, who used to be treated like a little princess, was now so sensible? Both of these girls are excellent. I also really like them. When will you bring them back? Lu Yin said with a happy smile. Both of these girls were exceptional, rare talents in the entire Great Yin dynasty, and clearly, Lu Yin was very pleased with them. Lin Dong could only force a smile. At this moment, even though he had the ability to eliminate a revolution stage powerhouse with a flick of his hand, he felt a nervous sweat forming. All right, father, mother, I can't stay here for long. The Eastern Mystery region is in chaos, and the Dao Sect is facing great difficulties. I have to go there. Lin Dong quickly changed the subject. You're leaving again? As expected, upon hearing this, Lu Yin immediately asked, no longer pressing the previous matter. The Dao Sect has helped you a lot, Donger. When they're in trouble, it's only natural for you to help. Besides, over the years, our Lin family has also received a lot of support from the Dao Sect. It's only right to return the favor, Lin Xiao said in a deep voice. Lin Dong nodded slightly, then looked at the Golden Ape Demon Commander and said, Golden Ape, take command of 2,000 tiger-devouring army soldiers and stay here. If anything happens, send word to me. Understood. The Golden Ape Demon Commander nodded. When will you leave? Lin Jintian also spoke up at this moment. Lin Dong was about to leave immediately, but upon seeing Lu Yan's gaze, he smiled and said, tomorrow. The next day, after bidding farewell to Lin Xiao and Lu Yin, Lin Dong immediately set off, leading his team towards the Dao Sect. Because Lin Dong was unfamiliar with the route to the Dao Sect, he took along some Dao Sect disciples who had stayed behind in the capital. This made them extremely excited, especially a young girl named Ran. From the moment they left the city, the excitement on her beautiful face had never faded. They didn't encounter any major delays along the way. With their speed, what would normally take over 10 days was completed in half a day, and they were gradually entering the Dao Sect's domain. However, as they neared the mountains where the Dao Sect was located, Lin Dong suddenly raised his hand and stopped on a mountain peak. He gazed far into the distance, and for some reason, his palm was beginning to sweat. It was a feeling akin to homesickness. There, he was bound to meet many people from his past. Senior brother Lin Dong, why aren't we moving? We're almost at the Dao Sect. And Ran, seeing that Lin Dong had stopped, asked in confusion. The little mink, who had been watching Lin Dong's complicated expression, seemed to understand his emotions. He immediately waved at Ran and said, Little girl, stay quiet for now. Ran blinked, then, recalling the terrifying strength of the little mink, she quickly pulled back and mumbled, Just because you're pretty doesn't mean you're impressive. Although her voice was small, it still reached the little mink's ears. Immediately, his handsome face twitched, and he took a deep breath, struggling to suppress the impulse to throw the girl out. You all stay here. I'll go to the Dao Sect alone for now. If there's any problem, send a signal, and we'll come immediately. Little Mink nodded, then forcefully grabbed the girl who was about to speak, dragging her away without mercy. Lin Dong's figure flickered, turning into a streak of light as he dashed forward. Within just a few minutes, familiar mountains came into view. Beyond those mountains, a massive sect protection formation was fully activated, with Dao Sect disciples patrolling diligently. Lin Dong appeared before the sect protection formation, his fingertip flickering with dark light. With a slight movement, he tore open a small crack in the formation and, like a ghost, slipped through without drawing any attention. Lin Dong moved swiftly through the vast Dao Sect, where streams of Dan River flowed and distant rumbling sounds echoed. Further ahead, countless Dao Sect disciples were engaged in their daily training sessions. That scene was still so familiar, as if deeply etched in his heart, unable to be erased. Standing on a cliff, Lin Dong gazed at the cultivation platforms that appeared vaguely in the mist, lost in silence for a long time. As Lin Dong stood there, absorbed in the sight of the Dao Sect, a melodious sound of a guqin suddenly floated from the distance. The sound was continuous, drawing him into a trance of pleasure. Hearing the music, Lin Dong's body slightly trembled, and his gaze lifted with complex emotions. On a distant cliff, a graceful figure sat cross-legged, a guqin placed in front of her. Her ice-blue hair cascaded down like a frozen waterfall. Huan Huan. Lin Dong looked at the slender, delicate figure, his palm trembling slightly. Yet, he suppressed his breath, ensuring he didn't reveal himself. Though he had often missed her lively face over the years, when the time to meet finally arrived, he couldn't help but feel a strange fear. He feared that time had changed something. The guqin's melody spread, and the Dao Sect disciples on the training platforms paused, gazing toward the figure on the cliff with admiration and respect. In the past 3 years, as Huan Huan repeatedly thwarted the Yuan sect's attacks, her reputation in the Dao Sect had nearly surpassed that of Xuanzi. As the guqin music gradually faded, Lin Dong, hearing the solitude and coldness embedded in the music, could not help but sigh softly. His perfectly concealed presence finally wavered. Boom! The music, which was about to fade, suddenly became sharp, like the sound of a string snapping. Countless Dao Sect disciples looked up in surprise, and they saw the graceful figure on the pine tree abruptly stand up. The figure moved, appearing high in the sky. She scanned the surroundings, her familiar face now devoid of the youthful innocence of years past. Instead, it was replaced by a beauty that could captivate the world, though there was a trace of coldness and frost in that beauty. But now, the cold, flawless beauty that had covered her face for years was streaked with shimmering tears. Countless Dao Sect disciples stood frozen, clearly bewildered by the sudden change in the usually composed and aloof junior sister. Ignoring the astonished gazes of the disciples, her beautiful eyes swept over the mountains, and then, biting her lip, her voice, laced with thin anger, echoed throughout the Dao Sect. Lin Dong, you dare return and not come out to see me? Her voice reverberated across the entire Dao Sect, and immediately, the sect erupted. The previously calm Dao Sect suddenly seemed to boil like oil in a pan. The sound of rushing winds filled the air, and the disciples were stunned to see the figures of the sect elders appearing in the sky. The name that had slipped from Huan Huan's lips seemed like a spell, causing the calm Dao Sect to be thrown into complete turmoil. Huan Huan. Another gust of wind sounded, and a graceful figure appeared in the sky. It was Xiao Xiao. Upon seeing the tears on Huan Huan's face, she quickly rushed forward and grasped her hand. What's going on? At their side, Xuanzi also appeared, looking at Huan Huan with surprise. Then, he sighed, noting that over the past 3 years, as Huan Huan's strength grew, her temperament had become more and more like an ancient iceberg. This thin, angry expression, like rain on a pear blossom, was something he had never seen before. Behind Xuanzi, The Dao Sect elders and the 4 palace masters followed, their gazes filled with astonishment as they looked at Huan. Among them were some familiar faces: Jiang Hao, Peng Tong, Wang Yin. It's Lin Dong. He's back. Huan bit her lip and spoke slowly. What? Hearing this, everyone was shocked. The faces of Wang Yin, Peng Tong, and the others were filled with joy as they hurriedly looked around. Lin Dong, junior brother. He's back? Where is he? Lin Dong. Xiao and Xuanzi were both taken aback. The latter focused his mind, scanning the entire Dao Sect. After a moment, his brow furrowed. I don't sense Lin Dong's aura. Huan, are you sure you saw him? Impossible. Huan gritted her teeth. His strength is likely even greater than father's. Xiao blinked in slight surprise, while the Dao Sect elders around her exchanged confused glances. Lin Dong had been gone for only 3 years, and back then, he hadn't even reached the life mystique stage. Could he really have surpassed the sect leader in such a short time? They looked at each other, and then shared a bitter smile. They all knew Huan's feelings for Lin Dong. Perhaps, this time, she had just thought too deeply about him. All right, you hide. Let's see where you can go. Huan's beautiful eyes swept across the mountain range, her eyes red with fury. Then, she closed them slightly, and in that instant, everyone felt the temperature around them plummet. Snowflakes began to fall from the sky, blanketing the entire Dao Sect in a snowy veil. From a distant cliff, Lin Dong gazed at the Dao Sect, which was now shrouded in snow, and couldn't help but smile wryly. He hadn't expected that Huan's senses had sharpened to such an extent. Earlier, he had only experienced a slight emotional fluctuation, and yet she had already detected him. But when his eyes caught sight of the familiar faces in the sky, his feelings grew even more complicated. He wanted to move, but his feet felt as heavy as lead, unable to budge. Snow? As Lin Dong was momentarily lost in thought, he suddenly felt a chill in the air. Snowflakes fell and melted on his body as a cold, ethereal sensation spread through him. Humph! Above, Huan's eyes snapped open with a cold snort. Her figure blurred, and she disappeared without a trace. Not good. The moment the snowflakes melted on his body, Lin Dong felt a sense of danger. He quickly turned to leave, but just as he moved, his footsteps froze. Before him, the snowflakes gathered into a swirl, and in the blink of an eye, a graceful figure appeared right in front of him. The figure was dressed in a light white gown, with a slender and graceful figure, and long ice-blue hair cascading down her back. At that moment, her beautiful face was streaked with tears, and her ice-blue eyes, now red, fixed an intense gaze on the young man who seemed frozen in place. Lin Dong stared at the familiar face before him, and memories he had buried deep within his heart resurfaced. Suddenly, his eyes became moist. In Alien Demon City, the girl had awakened a power that didn't belong to her in order to save him, and her hair had turned a deep blue. What are you doing? I'm not his match. Facing the furious expression on her face, she gave a bitter smile. Only this way can I force my father to show himself. I know this might provoke a war between the two sects, but I can't bear to see you die at their hands. Anyway, you've always been used to my willfulness, so let me be willful one last time. I don't understand the camaraderie between you men. If you insist on acting, I'll have my father knock you out and bring you back. Tears streamed down her face as she spoke, but in her eyes, there was a pleading look. I just want you to live. For him, the girl had let go of her past pride, all to protect the person she cared for. Memories rolled through Lin Dong's mind, everything so familiar, as if it had happened yesterday. His nose tingled, and something in his chest stirred painfully. Huan stared at his face, which kept changing expressions. After 3 years, he seemed to have lost some weight. She couldn't help but wonder how much hardship he had endured during these years. She bit her red lip, her eyes red-rimmed, and the longing that had been suppressed for 3 years surged up like a fountain. As she remembered how he had avoided her before, that longing quickly turned into resentment. Clenching her delicate fist, she gathered snowflakes to form a long sword of ice. Hide. Hide again. She gritted her teeth, her voice filled with anger. Swish. The snowflake sword flickered and tore through the air, striking toward Lin Dong like lightning. Seeing this, Lin Dong let out a helpless sigh and made no attempt to avoid the attack. The sword drew closer, but as it neared, the force behind it weakened. Finally, the sword struck his body, only to disintegrate into a flurry of snowflakes upon contact. The snowflakes scattered, but the figure still charged forward, her small fists pounding against Lin Dong's chest. As she did, her movements slowed, and eventually, she burst into tears, releasing all the sorrow and longing of these 3 years. Lin Dong looked down at the girl crying pitifully on his shoulder. He couldn't help but lift his head, inhaling a deep breath of the cold air before slowly reaching out and pulling her slender waist tightly into his embrace. Sensing his movement, the girl cried even harder, as if trying to pour out all the pain she had endured over these 3 years. Her sobs continued for a long time before they gradually weakened. At that moment, a soft cough came from nearby. Lin Dong looked up to seeing Xuanzi, EngSubs, King Yan, and the Hall Master of Wild Hall, Chen Zhan, along with the 2 elders from Wu Dao, all standing not far away. The entire mountainside was filled with Dao Sect disciples. Huan also noticed the commotion around her. Her usually calm face flushed with a faint red, and she bit her lip before clenching her small fist and punching Lin Dong lightly. She then turned and returned to EngSubs' side. Seeing this, EngSubs quickly hugged her, her heart filled with a quiet sense of comfort. Over the past 3 years, her little sister had become as cold as an iceberg. To see her like this again was something she hadn't witnessed in a long time. Lin Dong looked around at the familiar faces, his throat dry. Even though his heart had always been calm, no matter the danger, it was now thrown into disarray. He smiled at Xuanzi and cupped his hands respectfully. Sect Master. At the sound of his words, Xuanzi's body stiffened slightly. The difference that one additional word made felt like an insurmountable distance. EngSubs and Huan, standing nearby, also showed slight changes in expression. EngSubs quickly spoke up, Lin Dong, don't blame father. He had his reasons back then. Lin Dong gave a bitter smile and spoke with a complicated expression. After all, I withdrew from the Dao Sect back then, and now, entering again, it's already a bit of an offense. Nonsense. A voice suddenly roared with anger. Everyone turned to see the Daoist elder from the Wild Hall, his face flushed. He glared at Lin Dong and shouted, I brought you into the Dao Sect. If you wanted to leave, it had to be approved by me. What do you think the Dao Sect is? Do you think anyone can just leave whenever they want? If everyone thought like you, what kind of sect would this be? Although Wu Dao was shouting at him, there were tears in his eyes. He had chosen Lin Dong and brought him into the Dao Sect, and had always done his best to cultivate him. After the events in Alien Demon City, when he learned that Lin Dong had been forced to leave the sect by the Yuan Sect, he had been so enraged that he almost went to confront Yuan Sect directly. Fortunately, he had been stopped before he could act. Lin Dong fell silent. Wu Dao had shown him kindness, and Lin Dong had always respected him in his heart. However, the Eastern Mystery region was very different from the Demon region. In this place, sects held great importance, and once someone joined, it was like joining a family. Leaving the sect was considered a severe betrayal. Lin Dong, junior brother, Wang Yin said with a soft sigh, the disciples of the Dao Sect have always hoped for your return. Lin Dong, junior brother, came a serious voice from not far off. It was Pang Tong, his face tense, and his eyes filled with uncontainable excitement. You must already know the situation in the Eastern Mystery region, and you should also understand the Dao Sect's current plight. I don't know much, but one thing I do know, junior brother Lin Dong, is that you will never abandon us, your fellow disciples, just as you didn't abandon us in the alien demon domain. This year, many of our brothers have died at the hands of Yuan Sect. If it weren't for little Huan's breakthrough in power, the Dao Sect might already have been destroyed. Our feud with Yuan Sect is irreconcilable. Therefore, I, Pang Tong, Want to say something that was said back then? He paused, then suddenly knelt down on one knee. His rugged face was streaked with tears. Lin Dong, junior brother, please strengthen our Dao Sect. Bang, bang, bang. At the back, all the Dao Sect disciples fell to their knees in unison. The sea of people, stretching endlessly, each face filled with hatred for Yuan's sect and hope for the return of the one who had once led them. Lin Dong, senior brother, please strengthen our Dao Sect. Lin Dong, senior brother, please strengthen our Dao Sect. The deep, thunderous voices echoed across the land, shaking Lin Dong's heart. In that moment, a wave of intense emotion surged through him, his eyes reddening. Strengthen our Dao Sect. The deep voices united, shaking the mountains as they reverberated through the air. It felt as though even the very mountains were trembling in response. Lin Dong's eyes grew red as he gazed at the sea of kneeling disciples. Every face, flushed with emotion, looked at him with an almost fanatical trust and hope. Over the past year, Yuan's sect had launched wars, and the flames of battle had surged across the eastern mystery region. The Dao Sect had borne the brunt of the attacks, repeatedly invaded by Yuan's sect. If it weren't for Huan's power surge, the Dao Sect might have already been reduced to ruins, with countless disciples dead or scattered. Yet, despite the dangerous situation, no one had given up. There was still a glimmer of hope in their hearts, because they remembered the figure who had once appeared in the alien demon domain, when the Dao Sect disciples had been slaughtered and had turned the tide. Though the current situation was far more perilous, that figure had already taken root in the hearts of the Dao Sect disciples, becoming an unwavering belief. They believed that as long as he returned, no matter how dire the situation, they would overcome it. EngSubs watched this scene with red eyes, unable to stop the tears that fell. Lin Dong, come back. We, the Dao Sect brothers, all need you. EngSubs said softly. Huan's beautiful eyes were also fixed on Lin Dong, whose eyes were slightly red and body trembling. She could feel the turbulent emotions surging in his heart, like roaring waves. Lin Dong, come back. Chunjin also sighed softly. Senior brother Lin Dong, we've been waiting for you to return and lead us, the Dao Sect disciples, to strike against the Yuan sect. Countless Dao Sect disciples shouted in unison, their eyes full of hope and anticipation. Lin Dong took a deep breath of the cool air, suppressing the emotions in his heart. He gazed at the countless bright, sparkling eyes, and after a long while, a smile finally appeared on his lips. Master, I wonder if the Dao Sect would still accept a wayward disciple like me? Lin Dong looked towards EngShuani and said with a slightly hoarse voice. Joy exploded in the eyes of every Dao Sect disciple, and immediately, many of them had tears flowing from their eyes. Senior brother Lin Dong had really returned. Accepted. Accepted. As long as you don't blame me. At this moment, even EngShuani, with his calm temperament and status, had red eyes. He quickly spoke, his voice filled with emotion. Lin Dong's return to the Dao Sect was an invigorating force for the entire sect. Senior brother Lin Dong. As soon as EngShuani finished speaking, the Dao Sect disciples erupted into a frenzy, swarming over to lift Lin Dong into the air, cheering and shouting in joy as they tossed him high into the sky. Not far away, EngShuani looked at this scene and sighed softly. I suddenly regret the decision I made back then. His expression seemed to age significantly in that moment. Over the years, he had carefully protected the Dao Sect and its countless junior disciples, sacrificing so much for the sect. However, now it seemed that some of his cautious decisions might have been wrong. Father, you didn't make a mistake. We don't blame you. EngSubs, seeing his expression, felt a pang in her heart. She gently took his withered hand and whispered. Beside her, another slender jade-like hand hesitated for a moment before reaching out to grasp EngShuani's other hand. EngShuani froze for a moment, turned his head, and saw Huan, who was lightly biting her lip. Although she still hadn't spoken, her face, once cold and distant for 3 years, had softened just a little. In that instant, EngShuani's eyes filled with tears. His little daughter had finally let go of all her grievances against him. On a mountain peak outside the Dao Sect, The primordial energy gathered into a mirror. In the mirror, the scenes inside the Dao Sect were reflected clearly. The cheers could be heard as if they were right there. Elder Zhuli, Lu Qing, and the others observed the scene in the mirror. Although they didn't understand the exact relationship between Lin Dong and the sect, they could feel the sincere emotions that everyone held, and they couldn't help but feel moved. Little Mink, watching the scene in the mirror, sighed softly. He understood Lin Dong's feelings for the Dao Sect, and this sect truly deserved such devotion. When are you going to cry? Little Mink turned his head helplessly, looking at Ran, who was wiping her tears while staring at the mirror. Why should I let you manage that? Ran sniffled, her voice thick with emotion. Senior brother Lin Dong has finally returned. Our Dao Sect brothers have been waiting for him. We all believed he would come back. Having hope is good, but relying on others for everything isn't right. If you don't work hard on your own cultivation, no one can save you, Little Mink said lightly. Hearing Little Mink's discouraging words, Ran's big eyes widened with anger. You're talking nonsense. Every Dao Sect disciple has been working hard on their cultivation these years. No one has been lazy. Little Mink glanced at her but didn't answer. His lazy demeanor only made Ran grit her teeth in frustration. You're so annoying. Why is senior brother Lin Dong so great, but you're such a troublesome brother? Annoying? Little Mink paused, then a smirk appeared on his handsome face. Who are you talking about? Do you want me to kill you? Seeing Little Mink's sudden fierce expression, Ran screamed and hurriedly ducked behind the blind elder, only to peek out with an angry glare at Little Mink. Little Mink couldn't help but laugh. Beside him, Little Yin leaned in, grinning widely. Second brother, seems like you really enjoy teasing this little girl, huh? Little Mink froze for a moment, then cleared his throat and kicked him. Xiao Yin laughed loudly, and there was an inexplicable tone in his laughter. The cheers and excitement inside the Dao Sect lasted for a long time before finally gradually calming down. The sect leaders laughed as they ushered people out, sending the lingering crowd off to continue their cultivation. Lin Dong could only smile wryly as he looked at his tattered clothes. These guys really got carried away. However, this warm and comforting feeling was something he hadn't felt in many years. Are you all right? A soft voice rang out in front of him. However, there was a faint, unshakable chill in the tone. Lin Dong looked up and saw Huan standing before him. Her ice-blue long hair caused a slight pang in his heart, but he still smiled and nodded in response. Lin Dong, now that you've returned to the Dao Sect, how about taking up a position as an elder? EngSubs, having recovered his mood, walked up with the others, smiling. With his keen eyes, he could naturally tell that Lin Dong was no longer the same as before. What Huan had said earlier was indeed true. Lin Dong's strength had likely surpassed even his role as the sect leader. It's fine, let me just stay as a disciple in the Wild Hall. I enjoy it there, Lin Dong shook his head. He wasn't particularly interested in the elder position, but he cherished the days he had spent cultivating in the Wild Hall. Haha, looks like the Wild Hall will definitely be one of the 4 main halls now. Let's see who dares to compete for it. Wu Dao glanced proudly at the other 3 hall masters, laughing. The other 3 hall masters could only shake their heads helplessly. There was no way to break the rules like this. It's fine. I'm still a disciple of the Heaven Hall. If he stays in the Wild Hall, our Heaven Hall won't be afraid either. Huan smiled faintly. That rare smile, like an iceberg melting, released a cold yet alluring charm, making one's heart race. Although this girl had grown even more beautiful and her charm more captivating, at her core, she still retained the same pride she had 3 years ago. By the way, sect leader, I still have some friends and subordinates outside the Dao Sect. Could you open the formation and let them in? Lin Dong suddenly remembered Xiao Diao and the others who were still outside the formation and immediately spoke up. EngSubs nodded without hesitation, and with a flick of his sleeve, the sect protection formation surrounding the Dao Sect shimmered, then gradually dissipated. Not long after the formation dissipated, the sound of wind breaking through the air rang out from a distance, and then black clouds surged in. A terrifying aura shot up into the sky. This sudden surge of malevolent energy instantly caused many Dao Sect disciples to panic, thinking that the Yuan sect was invading again. However, their nervousness didn't last long, as EngSubs quickly sent someone to calm them down. When they learned that these were Lin Dong's companions, their tension turned into intense curiosity. The black clouds rolled in, finally settling on a vast cultivation platform in the Dao Sect. Thousands of soldiers from the tiger-devouring army, clad in black armor, stood motionless like statues. Their synchronized breathing made them seem like one entity. The aura they exuded was so oppressive that even EngSubs and the others changed their expressions. Although the Dao Sect disciples had gone through many battles in the past year, they were still far from matching the fearsome tiger-devouring army, which was like a death squad that had risen from the pile of corpses. After the tiger-devouring army arrived, several figures leaped onto the cliff where Lin Dong was and revealed themselves. When Xiao Diao, Grand Elder Zhu Li, and Lu Qing appeared, even EngSubs, with his superb control, couldn't help but show a look of shock. He himself was a powerful expert at the revolution stage, having made progress over the past 3 years, vaguely sensing some of the principles of reincarnation. However, the fluctuations radiating from these 7 individuals were even stronger than his own. These 7 people, apart from Xiao Yin, were all at the revolution stage, having reached the same realm of the revolution stage as him. Huan, seeing Xiao Diao and the others, also showed a hint of surprise in her ice-blue eyes. EngSubs and the others exchanged glances. After their initial shock, a deep sense of joy rose within them. Clearly, Lin Dong had come back fully prepared. This guy. In just 3 years, not only had he grown to this extent, but he was not alone. Around him, he had gathered a terrifying force capable of turning the Eastern Mystery region upside down. At this moment, EngSubs and the others finally began to calm their emotions, looking at Lin Dong with a complex gaze. It seemed that the Dao Sect's disciples had not been wrong. As long as their senior brother Lin Dong returned, all their troubles would be resolved. Just like the figure that had appeared in the alien demon region years ago, saving them in the final moment. On the cliff, Lin Dong introduced Grand Elder Zhu Li and the others. Elder Zhu Li and the others were quite courteous to EngSubs, though most of it was due to Lin Dong's influence. However, considering EngSubs' strength, he was no weakling, and certainly deserving of their respect. Sect leader, let's talk about Yuan Sect. We just returned from the demon domain and still aren't clear on the situation with Yuan Sect. As soon as Yuan Sect was mentioned, a cold glint flickered in Lin Dong's dark eyes. Yuan Sect declared war a year ago. At that time, it was just a few major sects taking action, and they made up various excuses. Although other super sects were somewhat dissatisfied with Yuan Sect's arrogance, none of them wanted to offend Yuan Sect over another sect's issues, EngSubs said with a bitter smile. But soon after, Yuan Sect grew even more rampant. They declared war on all the super sects, and the most shocking thing was that Yuan Sect's power skyrocketed to a terrifying level. The number of super powerful figures in the revolution stage surged, and the other super sects couldn't hold their ground. One by one, they were overrun. Now, in the Eastern Mystery region, aside from those sects that have allied with Yuan Sect, it's probably just our Dao Sect and the 9 Heavens Taiching Palace left standing. Half a year ago, Yuan Sect sent a large number of forces to attack Dao Sect, including 5 revolution stage experts. Fortunately, Huan was able to stop 3 of them. Though she managed to hold them off, she was also injured, EngSubs continued. One of those 3 was named Zhao Kuei, right? I've already killed him, Lin Dong said with a faint smile. If we meet those 3 again, they won't be my match. Huan glanced at Lin Dong, a slight curve to her lips. Though she said this, the cold aura emanating from her seemed to dissipate slightly at that moment. However, some of Yuan Sect's revolution stage experts have unstable auras. It doesn't seem like they've been improving steadily. It's more like they've been artificially boosted. Lin Dong smiled and then pondered. EngSubs nodded, then sighed. Even so, it's still terrifying. The power of the revolution stage would have been enough to make any sect its leader in the past. They must be relying on the power of the alien demons, Lin Dong said slowly. Alien demons? Upon hearing this, EngSubs' expression changed slightly. At his level, he was naturally aware of some information regarding alien demons and understood how terrifying they could be. Huan furrowed her brows slightly, and a strange light flashed in her ice-blue eyes. When I was in the Chaos Demon Sea, I encountered Yuan Sect's previous 3 minor kings. I discovered that there were traces of demonic seeds inside them. Later, Yuan Sect sent people to chase me, and they were all infused with alien demon power. Lin Dong spoke softly. Yuan Sect really is outrageous. They forced us out, yet still dared to send people after us. EngSubs said angrily. Though Lin Dong spoke lightly of it, everyone knew that when the actual confrontation occurred, it would have been a brutal battle. Heh, no worries. The people they sent are all dead. Lin Dong shook his head, then paused for a moment before asking, what about the 3 old dogs? What's their strength now? EngSubs was stunned for a moment, then chuckled. So Lin Dong was referring to Yuan Sect's 3 giants. Tian Yuanzi and the others have barely shown their faces since the war began. They haven't shown their faces? Lin Dong was now the one taken aback. EngSubs' expression grew serious as he nodded. The surface threats weren't what was most concerning. What was truly terrifying was the unknown. Despite the chaos in the Eastern Mystery region, the 3 leaders of Yuan Sect had remained quiet, and that made everyone uneasy. Also, according to some of the information we've gathered, Yuan Sect seems to be planning something big. I believe it's directed at us, Dao Sect. Yuan Sect has always hated us, but we've held our ground. If they take action again, they must have a way to destroy our Dao Sect, EngSubs said slowly. But for now, they don't know that Lin Dong has returned. With the strength we have now, we aren't afraid of them, EngSubs added with a smile. With Lin Dong and his powerful forces backing them, Dao Sect no longer had to live in constant fear as before. Something big, you say? Lin Dong sneered. Well, if that's the case, I'd like to meet them head-on. EngSubs nodded. Lin Dong was no longer the same disciple from 3 years ago. His aura and strength had already surpassed that of EngSubs, and with Lin Dong here, even EngSubs himself felt a newfound sense of confidence. Good. After a brief exchange with Lin Dong, EngSubs and the others took their leave, with Little Mink and Elder Zhuli following suit. Deliberately or otherwise, they left Lin Dong and Huan alone, leaving the two in a sudden silence. Lin Dong glanced at the girl beside him, taking in her slender, graceful figure and the icy blue hair that cascaded down, exuding a faint chill around her. He sighed gently. You're using power that isn't truly yours, far too much of it. His tone carried a hint of reproach, but beneath it, there was more concern than anything else. Hearing this, Huan gave him a sidelong glare and lightly bit her lip. What else could I do? You weren't here, and someone had to protect the Dao Sect. Besides, if I had to just stand by helplessly like 3 years ago, watching you fall into peril while being powerless to help, I'd rather become a cold, emotionless ice statue. Her voice softened toward the end, and beneath the chill covering her face, a faint blush seemed to appear. In that case, let me protect you from now on. Try not to rely on that power, Lin Dong said gently, a warmth stirring in his heart. Huan fixed her bright eyes on him, her crescent-shaped eyebrows lifting slightly with a hint of joy, though she turned her head away and replied, as if I could believe someone who knocked me unconscious at such a critical moment. This girl sure knew how to hold a grudge. Lin Dong smiled helplessly. At that time, he had been prepared to risk his life, and knocking her out was better than letting her watch him face death. Can you change your hair back? Lin Dong asked, looking at her icy blue hair, his tone carrying a trace of regret. Why? Do you not like it? Huan turned suddenly, glaring at him in anger. Lin Dong chuckled, shaking his head repeatedly. He knew she must have understood certain things, which only made her all the more sensitive. After a moment, Huan lowered her head, then looked up softly. It's been a while since you've been back to the Dao Sect. Let me show you around. With that, she started walking, and Lin Dong, his gaze complex, followed her at a leisurely pace. The two strolled through the Dao Sect grounds. Above them, spiritual rivers flowed through the sky, their rumbling echoing far and wide. Around them, disciples passed by in groups, casting curious glances at the pair, while laughter drifted from a distance. Lin Dong felt a bit helpless under their gazes, but Ing Huan, half a step ahead of him, seemed to bask in it. A slight, captivating smile softened her usually frosty features. Watching her lithe figure, her icy blue hair glistening under the sunlight, Lin Dong couldn't help but smile. He found this feeling rather pleasant. Do you know what that is? Ing Huan suddenly paused, turning her head to point ahead. Her beautiful face softened to the extreme. Lin Dong looked up to see a spiritual river stretching out in front of them, with an enormous ancient tree rising from within, its canopy spanning hundreds of feet. Waves of formidable energy radiated from the tree, its branches laden with fruit, each the size of a fist, brimming with potent energy. That's the immortal essence ancient tree? Lin Dong asked, astonished. Then his face lit up with joy. Yes. Ing Huan smiled, her gaze drifting to the tree. At that moment, the chill around her dissipated completely, revealing the vibrant girl of years past. Lin Dong's gaze softened with nostalgia. Years ago, this girl had held back powerful enemies to protect the seed of this immortal essence ancient tree. In the end, he had rushed back to save her just in time. This tree, in a way, was a testament to their shared efforts. Standing beneath the tree, the two fell silent, their expressions gentle as the sunset slowly descended. Eventually, Lin Dong broke the quiet, gently patting her shoulder. How long do you plan to stand here? Ing Huan shot him a playful glare for disrupting the rare tranquility, her expression carrying a hint of flirtation. Let's go to the Wild Hall, Lin Dong stretched and said. I promised something ages ago. It's time I did something about it. Promised something? Ing Huan paused, then chuckled. Oh, the Great Wilderness Monument? You actually remember? It's been over 2 years. If it weren't for me, the Great Wilderness Monument would have withered by now, thanks to you. Lin Dong felt a bit sheepish. To deal with the alien demon king sealed beneath the Great Wilderness Monument, it says it requires the power of 2 ancestral talismans. It should be doable now. Lin Dong said. Ancestral talismans, huh? I have one. Ing Huan replied on ly, extending her long, pale hand. Snowflakes gathered in her palm, and an ancient rune glowing with icy patterns slowly appeared. This is... Lin Dong stared at the ancient symbol in her hand, his pupils contracting slightly. Ice ancestral talisman? Let's go and deal with that problem. Ing Huan waved her hand, dispersing the ice ancestral talisman. Without even glancing at Lin Dong, she turned and walked away. Wait. Lin Dong suddenly called out. Ing Huan turned her head, her beautiful eyes meeting his. You. Lin Dong gazed into her ice-blue eyes, his hand instinctively clenching into a fist. You will always be Ing Huan, right? Ing Huan didn't answer. She looked deeply at Lin Dong, and after a long pause, a smile curved at her lips. With her hands behind her back, she lightly skipped forward, her laughter echoing behind her.